Welcome to the Reclaim the Night Perth podcast, hosted by Sarah, Liz and Ava. Links to resources relating to the topics we discuss are in the description. We hope you enjoy.
We're watching Why Women Kill and some of the observations that we made about that were to do with, married women and stuff. I was thinking about the thing that we were observing about the character who's got a garbage cheating husband who's having an affair that she knows about and is lying to her about it, and instead of telling him to go fuck himself, she's trying to fix it and try to figure out what the motivation is. Fix herself, because she figures that that the motivation for the cheating is located in her inadequacy somehow, and she's desperate and she's genuinely sincerely confused because she's really actually trying to understand.
But I'm womaning correctly.
She's trying to understand why he's doing this and expecting to find some kind of respectable logic underpinning it, instead of the answer being that your husband's a shithead who doesn't care about you and is garbage. A bad person.
And entitled, and he literally wants you doing this boring role that he is now bored of.
Yeah, I think that's the topic of conversation that's been happening a lot in the past maybe 5-ish years, particularly in media, exploring the idea of these women of that particular era. So I don't know when that character set, but I'm just thinking of
60s.
I was thinking of 50s. And the idea of how women are raised, no matter what class level you are, women go to university in order to not have a successful career, but to be more attractive as a wife, right? The level, and this actually touches into some of the stuff that I've been reading about what it's like in South Korea, and how women's professional stuff is more about making them more appealing to men as a wife and a mother, rather than as a successful woman in her own right with an intellectual mind, who can have fascinating conversations, who can think strategically about things, who's creative, who's, etc. And the idea that, women go through all this training in childhood and teen years and never ending, really, just to be a wife. And then and men raise women to do this. And then when it's time to marry them, they're like, yes, you're the perfect wife. You'll make my family happy. You'll make me happy. Everything will work. Everything will fit within this mold of what I believe is right. And then, oh, she's boring. She's dull. All she talks about is stuff to do with the kids and stuff to do with the house. She doesn't want to go out anymore because she's too tired all the time for all the housework she's doing. Okay, I'm going to go find someone else and have an affair or whatever. Or I'll divorce her, I'll drop her, and have my midlife crisis where I find myself again. It's men
it's
put
still in the Madonna whore dichotomy.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
And men put themselves within this rigid mold of what is respectable, what is okay, depending on, class definitions of that. These men define these roles, and then they get upset when the women successfully meet their demands.
Yeah. And, you see there are countries around the world where the governments are worried because there are declining birth rates, because women have looked at this and gone, no, thank you. That doesn't look very appealing. And that's a problem for those governments, and they're trying to find ways to coerce women into it, rather than actually going, if we need more children, maybe we need to stop making this such a life of drudgery and punishment for women, because if women won't enter into it freely, maybe there's a problem, not the women are wrong and we need to make them.
No, it's a lot easier to groom and con those women into doing it. You can incentivize reproduction, although a lot of women want to reproduce anyway, obviously, that goes without saying. But you can, for the women who maybe would be on the fence about it, you can incentivize it, or you can kind of groom them into it, or put them on a pipeline into it, right? From girlhood. And romance is a big part of that. Romance is a big part of that.
Romance is huge pipeline. You're not sufficient on your own. I mean, part of that is also the pushing of the idea that financially you can't survive on your own, which is, you know, it's difficult for everybody on their own, but particularly for women. But yeah, I mean, one of the things that makes me really annoyed, upset, horrified is when we see little boys and girls being friends. And I mean, you know, little, you know, 2, 3, 4 onwards. And people go, oh, is that your boyfriend? Is that your girlfriend? No, they're just freaking friends. And you see people start to imprint those ideas, you know, so.
Yeah, they do, because in with that
relentlessly.
kind of commentary, it's not just obviously that they suggest it, but it is actually reinforced by the fact that it is getting attention in the first place. I mean, this is, you know, we all know that there are times when a child might fall over and before actually reacting, look to whatever adult caregiver is in the vicinity to see how they're reacting to inform how they're going to respond, right? So just the fact that you have adults putting on this kind of exaggerated, enthusiastic sort of, is that your boyfriend or is that your girlfriend? Are you going to get married? And that kind of stuff. Obviously, it like sends a really clear message to the child of like, wow, this is a thing of like significance, you know, that people respond to positively, like it's an important thing. Like it's an idea that like maybe I don't totally understand, but it's in technicolor, you know, with just a simple comment.
Yeah, and it makes kids think that friendship is less important than romance, and so they grow up believing that the only way that they can address any feelings of loneliness is through romance rather than through, you know, deep friendships or living with friends for the rest of their life or whatever. Like, you know, I'm just thinking about the women that I know who are elderly or, you know, over the age of 50 who, you know, if they've had kids, their kids have grown up, they live on their own, they have feelings of loneliness and they don't know what to do with them. And so they don't think that the answer is to go out and socialize and build a strong foundation of social engagement with a community or, you know, with the wider world. It's like, oh, I'm lonely, therefore, does that mean that I should be looking for a romantic partner? I don't really want one, but is that what I'm supposed to be doing? And then everywhere around them, from media and even their own friendships, women are reinforcing the idea of that if you're not with someone, then there's something missing in your life, or when are you going to find your next partner? When's that going to happen, or whatever. And you get that throughout your entire life of like, when is it going to happen, or when is it happening again? Women are just constantly put this like mounting pressure of, oh, I guess I should be looking for someone to live my life with.
And I think we also reinforce this by the way we set up conflict between women. You know, when we set women up, socially set them up to be in competition with each other, part of that is about you know, how you then set up, you are prizing relationships with, you're framing relationships with men as some kind of prize to fight for, but you also harm the bonds between women. You actually break you undermine the capacity of women to seek that kind of solidarity together. You know, you've got all sorts of things to say about the nuclear family and the ways in which, you know, the focus on the nuclear family isolates women and keeps them, you know, really exploited and, you know, very you know, serving very particular ends. And you know, one of the feminist questions has been, well, you know, how do you oppose that process, you know, the exploitation of women and the isolation of them in the private realm? And I don't think the answer is multiple partners. I think the answer is, you know, really strong societies of bonds between women. I feel like that is a much more robust, meaningful answer. And, you know, a lot of women will say that, you know, boyfriends come and go, but actually your friends are there permanently. But culturally, we don't kind of necessarily understand that can actually mean something really profound.
I think it also unfortunately affects lesbians, because it's like we're still reared in that world of you must find a partner. Your value is based on whether you're with someone and things like that. So even, you know, even though the rearing is about heterosexual partnerships of like, oh, have you got a boyfriend? You know, that happened to me when I was a child of like, I had a male best friend and it was like, oh, your boyfriend and girlfriend. And it was very uncomfortable. And then it makes that friendship hard to keep. And then you grow up and you think, oh, you know, you question your sexuality and stuff, and you're still getting it. And then when people do accept that you're gay, then they're still going, well, when are you gonna, you know, do you have a girlfriend yet? Do you have, you know? And it's just this constant expectation of, you don't have any value on your own. You must be with someone in order for me to feel like you are settled. You have your shit together if you're with someone. It doesn't matter how responsible you are outside of that. If you don't have that, then something's wrong, something's missing, something needs to be fixed about your life.
Which is ironic, right? Because women can be it can be a very, excuse the wording, liberating to actually be living your own life on your own terms. I mean, granted, a lot of women will struggle to do that. Economic situations make that very difficult. But I mean, you know, keeping women in relationships keeps them also out of trouble, keeps them out of feminist activism. I mean, not completely, but it is one of the challenges. Women disappear into families, and you know, notwithstanding how much women love their families, it actually impacts on their ability to be in the public sphere quite dramatically. The other thing is that I've heard from straight friends that if you're a single woman, you can be social anathema. It can be really difficult to get invitations to things because other women might be scared that you're going to steal their boyfriend, which is, I think, frankly, sometimes thinking that their boyfriends are hotter property than they possibly are. But and I don't see that in lesbian community in the same way. So it's kind of interesting because there's so much of that socialization that plays out for lesbians, but some of it doesn't seem to in quite the same way. But yeah, all of this is pushing women inevitably towards relationships. And, you know, I think if we were really honest with girls about what was involved, about, you know, the mothering of the partners and the, you know, the mental load and all the working and, you know, the double shift, because you might need to work, but you're also going to need to do all the, you know, the housework, all of the domestic shift of work. Yeah, women would be really much less likely to go for that unless we dressed it up in, I don't know, pink frills and happily ever after and magical weddings and all of the, you know, all of the stuff that comes with that.
Yeah, like you have to romanticize this stuff. That's a huge part of it. I really, really feel like so many girls would be baffled as to why adult women would do this if it weren't for the happily ever afters that they're just like bombarded with. And not just around, you know, having relationships, although I'm not against romantic relationships at all. Big fan. I'm a sucker for romance myself as well, just saying. But also it's the relationships and the fact that, you know, if you don't want to have one, you don't actually have to have one. And but also marriage in particular, and also even having children as well, like the romanticism of reproduction as well. Now, obviously, that is a thing that has a lot of significance to people. Like,
I mean, yeah, children bring a lot
naturally,
of joy.
of course, that yeah,
you know,
they
all
can
of that, blah blah blah. As the
profound.
person as mother in the group, yeah, kids, etc. Happy. Yep.
Yeah, well, I mean, not always, but yeah, profound,
Not always,
like
no.
really
Yep.
huge, significant thing. But at the same time, there's also all of this additional like romanticism around it in the way that we talk
Yeah.
about it and dress it up. And we
We
don't
are
talk
so
about
dishonest about the realities of motherhood. It is totally immoral to lie to women about what is involved. Women's lives change forever. Now, women might want to take that on, but they should know what they're taking on. They should absolutely know what the risks are, what the implications are. And if it's so freaking magical, then maybe women will do it anyway. It really bothers me that women are so shell-shocked in the first, you know, I don't know, weeks, months, years of motherhood about that impact. And that's in good scenarios. That's in cases where they don't have a deadbeat partner, a partner that ditches them. You know, they're not living in poverty. When you know, things get harder, it's even worse. And it's really, we should be very real about that. I mean, I think we do see this play out differently in different cultural communities. So there's complexity in there. Yeah, we romanticize the hell out of it, and it would be really interesting to see what the birth rate would be like if women didn't have this romanticized, if women had really clear understandings of what was involved and went in open-eyed.
Yeah, and that's where we get to having children. So that comes after birth and pregnancy, and we're not terribly frank about the realities and risks of that either, because it is really, really bad for women's health, carries a huge amount of risk relative to the other activities one might engage in in order to
You can
get
have some
kind of joy.
Fairly significant permanent changes.
Yeah, and the fact that like very, very much wanted pregnancies and things, you might come out of your birth experience like disabled and traumatized. That's actually possible. Obviously, things are a lot better in the 21st century, but
then there's obstetric violence. I mean, huge.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't actually know the stats, which is embarrassing. I feel like I should know more about it. But, there are women who know a lot about this, and everything we hear about the rates of obstetric violence is horrifying. If you saw that kind of number of men coming out of a single standard male experience traumatized, I'm sure there'd be inquiries into it. But it's women. We expect them to suffer, and it's normal for them to lose their sovereignty and their boundaries because the good of the baby. But when does the mother get matter?
I would like us to touch on the part that comes before that, which is heterosexual sex. Most of the time, not all of the time, but most of the time it's preceded by heterosexual sex. And are
we going to talk about the orgasm gap? Sorry, go on.
I mean, we can, but what I was thinking of is that, like, a lot of girls, when they find out what is going to be expected of them, when they find out about the birds and the bees, are quite horrified by the idea, actually. And I think that that's another not because for heterosexual women, sex with men itself is a problem, obviously, inherently, but because the way that heterosexual sex often happens, like the normalized kind of standard way that sex between a man and a woman with the requisite parts normally is depicted in, like just cultural imagery and media and stuff like that. It's a very particular thing, right? And a lot of girls are like quite stunned. Some are horrified, and it's not necessarily because they are little lesbians. Like, I think that that's another reason why we have to romanticize it, because it's the romance of it that softens the stuff that seems unappealing and can actually be like the bigger incentive. Like, for a lot of girls, the incentive is not necessarily desire for what's on offer, but what they have been led to believe comes of it.
And
the romance, the meaning of it, the significance of it. It's yeah. So I think that's another scam, actually.
Can I take you to the other end, right? There's a lot to say about courtship. There's a lot to say about public marriage proposals and the coercive bullshit that is. I also want to talk about the happily ever after, because one of the things that is most concerning is that the fastest rising homelessness demographic is women over 55. And that says something. So we have a cohort of women who have earned less because of the sex-based pay gap, the gender pay gap. They have taken more time off, so they're paid less on an hourly basis. They also take more time off to look after kids. That's unpaid. They will often do, a lot of the caring for parents and, anyone in the family who needs it. They will, be looking after, a number of them a percentage will stay home to do that and just never work. So, women have, significantly less, if not no, superannuation. The figures are kind of stark because, of course, WA has the worst gender pay gap in the country because of the mining industry, no doubt. But over years, that is amplified. And so by the time you get to retirement age, women, on average have significantly less around. Of course, this is, all a bit class-based as well. But then you might get to that point, and women who are then suddenly single, whether they leave or they are left, they are so vulnerable. It is already difficult to sustain a single life, in Perth, in lots of parts of Australia. And when you factor in the decreased assets, the time that women have spent looking after everybody but themselves, they are then in deep trouble. And we have not yet worked out how to deal with that. But this is women paying the price for the role that is expected of them and for playing their part as they were required to do. And that is the net result of all of the pink haze. Homeless women, homeless older women, and it is outrageous. I think we should be fostering a greater sense of independence. And I mean, if we think about the things that we can do at an individual level, right, it's hard. We can try and encourage and foster women's sense of the centering of themselves in their own life. I'm not suggesting that we encourage anybody to be selfish monsters, but yeah, women should be the center of their own lives. We need little girls to understand that their life is about them and not about how everybody else in the world experiences them, notwithstanding the fact that we live in a community and we want girls we need to develop boundaries. And I think, we need to develop solidarity with other women and talk about these things, because I think that's the point at which women go, oh, you too. And that's how we start fostering faith in ourselves individually and collectively. And I think faith in ourselves collectively is the key.
You have been listening to the Reclaim the Night Perth podcast. To catch future episodes or see what else we are doing, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube.